Okay, so we are live and we are recording. Welcome everyone to our event. We're so glad that you all could make it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we will jump right in. Okay. Yes, looks like I'm sharing the right screen. All right, so this is our adult event for Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action, Year of Purpose, Lifetime of Practice, presented by the BLM 5280 Education Squad. I'm Branta Lockett. I am on the Education Squad, and I'm also the Executive Director of 5280 Freedom School, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'll pass it on to the other facilitators. Dr. Michelle, if you want to go next.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am Michelle McBride, and I'm one of the members of the 5280 squad, and I'm a teacher in the Cherry Creek School District, and I'll pass it on to Mars.
Hi, I'm Mars. I'm a member of the Ed Squad as well with BLM 5280. I also direct the summer program for our students, and I'm also a teacher.
Hi, I'm Xavier. I am also a part of the 5280 Ed Squad, and pronouns are he, him, his. Yeah, glad to be here.
Awesome. So we'll jump in. Mars, I made you a co-host just in case anyone else comes. You can kind of add them in here. Okay. So our agenda for this hour, we just did our introductions. Welcome. Then we're going to move on to our why. And then the main point, the thing that you all are here for, how to encourage your children, their principals, teachers, school districts, school board members to participate in Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action, Year of Purpose. Then we'll do a quick overview of the BLM at School Week's principles, followed by a question and answer session. And we do have one parent on so far, but hopefully more people will join. If you have any questions, you can feel free to put it in our chat, and you can private message us, or you can put it in the chat, or you can come off of mute. And then if you're on Facebook, you can also put questions there. And now I'm thinking about who's going to manage the Facebook, but it's okay. So let's start off of why are you participating in this session? What do you hope to get out of this? What have you noticed about how Black lives are treated at your school? And how familiar are you with the Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action? Is this in the Jamboard, Michelle? Or
No, this is not yet the Jamboard. Well, actually, we do have a Jamboard where you can answer some of these questions, but this is just some questions to think about. And I don't know if if I know we've got one parent on, if you want to answer any one of these questions. Abraham?
I didn't know I was the only thing, but yeah. Yeah, so
Sorry to
I
put
would
you on the
say,
spot.
oh, no worries at all. So my name is Abe or Abraham. Pronouns are he, him, his. I actually have two sons, one who's in kindergarten, one who is in fifth grade. I'm also a PhD candidate at the School of Education in Boulder, the University of Colorado Boulder. And so I guess what brought me to this session is I'm interested in learning more about how parents can be engaged and involved, especially Black parents. So since I moved here from California, and my son went from going to school in like Oakland area to going to school in Boulder, which is dramatically different as far as demographics. And so I'm always trying to think about how I can keep him engaged. He's biracial, so he's Filipino and Black or African American. And so I'm thinking about like how can I keep his identities respected when he's in an all white space, but also keep him aware of that dual identity and how to kind of approach others when they say, or when they kind of microaggress him or do things that make him feel uncomfortable, but how to essentially
Leah,
not
sit down.
necessarily stand up for himself, but just communicate with others about his identity and just be humanized in educational spaces.
Thank you so much for sharing, and we welcome you, and we hope to be able to answer some of those questions. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And I empathize with your son's experience. I went to school in Miami, Florida. I grew up in Miami. And so it was definitely a shock, culture shock when I went to college at Vanderbilt from like seeing a lot of Black teachers and other Black students to being one of only. So we're glad to have you here. I saw another parent or educator just joined. Amy, if you want to share why you are here or what do you hope to get out of this, no worries if you don't want to.
I'm multitasking. We're killing some energy here at the mall playground. And anyway, yeah, I guess I'm just always, as an adoptive parent to a Black daughter, I'm always looking for ways to further educate myself, support this little firecracker. We love her. And she's just had so much success. Anything we've done, whether it's a Saturday school with you all or a summer camp, y'all are great. So I'm here. She also wants to say hi.
Hi, lovely.
Say hi, Miss Branta.
Hi.
And there you go. I will mute her now.
We love her too. So glad she
Yes.
made her appearance. Awesome. So let's just jump right in then. Okay, so we would love you all to ponder these questions, and we have a Jamboard. If Michelle, if you want to drop the link in the.
I'm going to put the link in the chat right now.
But we would love to know what district. Well, I think you both share what district your child is in, so you don't have to reshare that. But has there ever been a time that you wanted to advocate for your child at school and you did not know how to do it? Have you ever successfully advocated for your child at school? What were some strategies that you use or best practices that you can share with other parents? What is your students' class, school, and district doing for Black Lives Matter at School Week? If you have any idea, let us know. And then, yeah, you can post your answers on the Jamboard.
And there are 4 different Jamboards when you click on it. So the each of those questions is on its own Jamboard.
I'm also wondering, since, it is February, Black History Month, I'm wondering if schools are doing anything for Black History Month, or if you all have noticed that Black history is just taught in February at your schools, or anything like that. Like, have you all noticed that Black lives are not being represented throughout the school year by the teachers and the school that your student attends?
Awesome. Yeah, I had to stop sharing my screen for a second. Sorry, Xavier, that I took your slide, but you could go ahead and jump in anytime. And I put the Jamboard in the Facebook chat as well, if anyone wants to check it out. While we do that, Michelle, do you mind sharing some resources? I could share my screen again.
Sure. I was just looking at the Jamboard and I was just looking at some of the schools that people were listing on the Jamboard. So while we give families or participants some time to answer the questions in the Jamboard, I'll go over the resources. And I'll put a Padlet in the chat as well in a couple of minutes. But of course, the BLM at School Week website has tons of resources for parents and educators. Then the Zinn Project also has some information, and then pbs.org has some information about parents who want to talk about racism. And then a couple of books that we thought were exceptional were Beverly Daniel Tatum's Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria, Layla Saad, Me and White Supremacy, Push Out by Monique Morris, Christopher Emden, Dr. Christopher Emden for white folks who teach in the hood, Black Stats by Monique Morris again, and The Teacher Wars by Dana Goldstein. And I personally believe that we should always buy books by Black authors just to continue to support them. So feel free to buy those books instead of necessarily checking them out at the library and then keeping them for yourself. You can always pass it on. And then I'll put the Padlet link in the chat in a second.
And again, like, this is interactive, and just as much as that you all are learning from us, we would love to learn from you. So if you have any resources that you recommend, also feel free to share it with us and share it with the community.
Yes, and just so you all know, on the Jamboard at the top, there's little arrows where you can go to the next frame. That's how you get to the next questions on the, because I noticed folks answered the first question, but there are 4 more questions on there for you all to answer.
Cool. I think you're up, Mars.
Okay, yes. All right, yes. So the whole point of today, advocacy, how to advocate for our babies, our children, our community in their schools and their districts. All right, so as you can see here, email or meet with teacher, principal, superintendent, and school board representative. Those are always options. And figuring out those email addresses or phone numbers are usually listed on the websites. So we put the websites in there. What is our class, school, and district doing to support Black Lives Matter at School Week, or are they participating at all? Is a good thing to consider. And Black History Month, as I mentioned. Before we hopped on this call, we were discussing other ways of advocating, and we talked about joining parent committees at the school, because oftentimes you might be surprised to find that there are parents at your school who are looking for the same types of programs and initiatives that you're looking for. So it might be less intimidating or easier to join up with other parents and approach that way.
Yeah, and I just want to add, so when I was a teacher, we pushed for Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action in my school, and it was really interesting because I came across some pushback from leadership because they were like, well, there are these principles that maybe not all of our families will agree with or feel aligned to. And I, as a teacher, pushed back against that. And I actually have a quote in an article that was written a couple of years ago that's on the Padlet as well. But if you do come against some of those obstacles, just let them know, like, it's really about embracing Black lives inclusively, all Black lives. And so, like, it's not a monolith. And so what the Black Lives Matter 13 guiding principles represent is that there are different ways that Black people show up and different ways that Black people show up authentically, and that we acknowledge that. So if you do get some resistance around that, feel free to check out that article and use some of that language, or just, express like the importance of letting our children know that they are okay as they exist, and that whatever their identities are right now, that it's okay, and that their school should embrace that as well. Any other tips from the teachers about Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action in the classroom? I think another easy thing to do to start is read alouds, right? Like people don't push back against read alouds that much. And so really think about like what books are your children reading at home and at school, and then thinking about ways to questions that you can ask to engage your children in this deeper and critical thinking and deeper learning.
That's a great point, Branta, because I feel like some teachers are hesitant. Many teachers are hesitant to do BLM at school week. And so, yeah, I was in a kindergarten classroom this morning and they were reading about Ruby Bridges, and then the teacher was doing character traits. Ruby was brave, to keep going to the school when the white parents were yelling at her every day, but she was a Black teacher. So I question how many white teachers are willing to do the work. And that's why it's so important for parents to just check in with their teachers this week and say, hey, what's going on? How can I support? You know, and maybe they just need to hear what book they need, what book is a good idea. Maybe parents can suggest a read aloud, come in to read and volunteer if you can get an hour off or something, and just go in and answer any questions that kids sometimes are, or teachers are afraid to address, but kids want to ask. And parents might be more comfortable answering that question, those questions.
Yes. And I think another easy entry point, books, again, books, teachers love books, right? Recommending books for staff to engage in together. That's like a real easy way to get them on the same page, or even to start recognizing some of these different things. And with that, I will share my screen again. So I think we're going to jump into, or are there any more responses on the Jamboard? Because I can go back to that if there are.
Branta, can you share your screen so we can see the responses on the Jamboard, or do you want to just read them?
Oh yeah, I can do that. Maybe. Yes, I can do that. Okay. Xavier, do you want to take this over?
Sure, no problem. Would you like me to read that question or move one in the PowerPoint?
You could read the question and the answer.
Sure.
And then if you have
Question
feedback.
for parent, has there been a time that you wanted to advocate for your child at school and you didn't know how? Question for a teacher, was there a time you wanted to advocate for a student and you did not know how? The response down there, I noticed I have to construct counter narratives at home that make sure my student's history is included in the curriculum. I also have to work to keep his confidence up, so he does.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And that's a good point. A lot of times it starts at home, but that puts it should be in schools. Also a plug for 5280 Freedom School, which is opening this fall for kindergarten and first graders, right? Like Black history and Black Lives Matter should be something that children see in the curriculum, and not just during February, but throughout the year. Okay, here's another one.
Hey, Branta, this is Amy. Back to that last slide, I kind of have a question for you all. You all know I'm at Hallett. Well, at least you do, probably, Branta. So we're really fortunate that we're in a school where it's predominantly Black school. A lot of Black teachers, tons of Black mirrors for Leah. And if it wasn't for the fact that it was in our neighborhood, we would be all over BLM 5280. But right now we're committed, and a parent engagement committee has been formed. This is new. It just started in December. I'm noticing, as I finally got to attend one, that it is mainly the white parents in the school running this committee. And therefore, I guess my question is, it doesn't feel like it represents the culture of the school. So as I participate in that, that way of advocating for my student, I guess I'm just wondering, I'm trying to stay in my lane because I want to preserve the culture of the school. It's a huge reason why we've chosen Hallett. And I just worry about it shifting. So I guess, do you have any suggestions on how we can attract more voices to that? That's more representative of the community? Any ideas?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. We were just having a conversation about Hallett a few days ago. We love Hallett. We love
Yeah.
Dominique.
I know.
Like, please keep Leah at Hallett. You know, you're not going to send your kids to 5280 Freedom School. You can send them to Hallett.
But I've listened to Nice White Parents podcast. I've seen what's happened with like the school within a school at Stedman and Smith, and it's just something I don't want for Hallett. Anyway, so I would love to hear any insights you have on how to advocate appropriately and not just, bring my perspective to those meetings.
So I think again, thank you for showing up for your student. That is important. We actually ran across that issue when we were hosting focus groups a few years ago for BLM 5280 Freedom School summer camp. And one thing that we noticed is that we had to figure out, how do we reach those other families? And so like just talking to families, finding out, well, what day, what time works for you, what platform works for you. It could be like, maybe people are working during that time.
Right.
Something else that I think you could start doing now is just like asking families, what would bring you to these meetings? Is it that we need to provide dinner? Is it that like the time, you need a different time, a different day? And maybe you have like, sometimes you meet in the morning, sometimes you meet in the evening, so you can capture different families.
Yeah.
I also think about too, like other ways that you can collect information. And so it could be sending out a survey with the different ideas. But again, I think we have to just think about the circumstances that allow families to come, and they're like, there still are barriers to families showing up. And so how do we break down those barriers so that our families can participate, and just understanding that participation can look different for different people?
No, that's good. That's all really good, because it's something that, like I said, I've been to I think it was our third meeting, and I Zoomed in, which was great. They didn't have that option before. So I think that that's helpful, but I just want to be able to give some feedback to the gal who kind of spearheaded it, and just say, we need this to be, we need to figure out ways to, have our committee here represent the beauty of Hallett, right? And it just doesn't yet. So anyway, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Amy, I would love to just add one more. Sometimes people need, when people get invitations via email, or, sometimes it's spam, it's too much. And sometimes they just need a personal connection, like a phone call. So maybe when you're dropping off your kid, if you see somebody else that who's in your child's class, you can invite them personally.
Okay.
Sometimes just having that personal connection. Another thing I think of, and I think it's great that we have Zoom, and that some people can be in person and some people can be Zoom. But in addition to different times, different days, like Branta said, morning, evening, childcare, like if we could get teenage volunteers to have the kids be in another room, and that sometimes helps when, and providing food for the kids and for the adults. Those are some things that help.
No, that's actually, I think, something we could probably simply figure out. So thank you.
Yes, and don't be afraid to name it too. Be like, we want Black families meetings. You can say that, right?
I mean, we do. And I've, we've had some conversations with Dominique about, trying to figure out enrollment at Hallett, and she needs to essentially double the size of the school, but also preserving the culture of the school is really tricky with gentrification and everything that's going on. So, but yes, I think it will be helpful if we have more Black families at the meetings. So I will definitely, my husband's pickup drop off. So I'm going to task him with making sure he's spreading the word.
Nice. Yes. And other parents who are on the committee can also do the same.
For sure.
Yeah. Thank you for that question, Amy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, this, we can go through the rest of the Jamboard questions and then dive right into the principles.
Okay. So this one is a question for both parents and teachers. Oh, I'm sorry, Xavier. Go for it.
No problem. What methods of advocacy have worked for you in the past? We had a rough start to the year, new teacher, and a para was quick to label our daughter as aggressive and hard to control. We scheduled conferences with all stakeholders at the school to make sure our daughter's needs and strengths were understood.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And parents, that is definitely important to let your don't let them label your kid, right? Like, and that, Black students, it just happens, right? It's, let me warn you about such and such. And it's not fair, right? It's not fair to our students, and things that are seen as aggression or seen as hard to control. Well, why are we trying to control a child? Like, let's start there. So I definitely love the idea of scheduling conferences with all stakeholders. So principals, teachers, paras, include the child too, once once they're ready to be invited into that conversation as well. I love that one. Go ahead, Xavier. I'm sorry.
All good. And then over here, this one is, I try to be hands-on. It's difficult to do sometimes as a solo parent. I would love to learn new strategies for advocating for my student. And our other comment at the bottom, we are currently participating in our school's parent engagement committee.
I just wanted to just really honor the parent who said, as a solo parent, that's really hard, and we are so busy, and so sometimes it's hard to get into parent teacher conferences. And so I think that for that parent, maybe sending an email or a phone call to the teacher, to your classroom teacher, just so they hear from you, or, can connect with you via email, like even just a email or text. I don't know if you can text your teacher if you don't have their cell phone numbers, but I mean, email, just say, here I am. I can do a phone call if I can't do in person. And so just letting them know that you are there and you are willing to engage with them. It might not be in person. It might not be the traditional way of engaging that teachers are used to, but sometimes just dropping a line, saying hi, what can I do? Or, via email or phone.
Yes, and also in reverse. So for the educators listening to this, a positive message goes a long way. So call a positive phone call home, a positive text message home, like families really appreciate that. So don't be afraid to do that too. And, make sure it's like you're actually engaging with the child so that you can speak to real things about the child. And that'll help with the relationship with the student as well.
Okay, and these are the responses for what is your student's class, school, and district doing to support Black Lives Matter at School Week? Can we make that yellow one bigger as I read this other one? We have a Black History Month Spirit Week and are lucky to be in a predominantly Black school where it's always Black History Month. Yeah, that's cool. Definitely a positive right there. And then this other comment, my son's teacher spent more time learning about Groundhog Day than Black History Month. Oh no. We worked on Black History flashcards at home. Seems like I'm spending more time introducing.
It got cut off.
Yeah, but it seems like the gist of it is if the parent is spending more time at home doing the Black history education than the student is receiving at school.
I remember when BLM, when we first had our summer school, we had a lot of parents saying they were teaching their child. It's like they had a parent curriculum or a Black history curriculum to go alongside for the entire year, not just the month of February. to kind of like unlearn some of the, or unteach some of the things that the child was learning at school. And so I know that parents of color sometimes come across this where they're doing double duty. They're a parent and a teacher. And that's something we want to change. And that's why we are trying to open our own school. But I think for this parent, I don't know if you want to like donate a book to the classroom on, Black history, or, touch base, but it's heartbreaking to hear that they spent more time on Groundhog Day. Then feel free to share the Padlet that we put in the chat with that teacher, and see what they can do.
Okay, I think that's the end of the Padlets. Yeah, and I'm thinking for that parent too, definitely reach out to the teacher and think about different ways that you can advocate for your student. And like, yeah, let the teacher know that Black History Month is every month. Black history is American history. And so I didn't even know people were still teaching Groundhog Day, but just like let them know the importance, and even let them know like you're spending time, your own time, supplementing the education of your child. Okay, so we'll stop quickly to see if there are any questions from families before we move into the 13 guiding principles. Okay, so let's go into it. Here you go.
Sweet. So our first principle is collective value. And whoa, what happened there? All right, collective value. And just everybody is important. That's kind of like why we're here, kind of like we're focusing on that all Black lives matter, be it different abilities, disabilities, learning styles, religions, or financial, situation. So some reflective questions. You guys can take your time to read that blurb on the side, but we're going to get into some reflective questions over here to the right. So what does collective value mean to you, to our two participants in the Zoom right now? Feel free to unmute yourself and jump in whenever. And some of our Ed Squad can definitely jump in and answer that question as well.
I can jump in from both a parent and former educator standpoint. And I currently, I work really closely with special ed teachers. So this hits home for me in so many aspects, from, wanting to advocate for my own children, to the former students I had, to, working with special educators to meet needs of students with diverse needs. It's important because we need to amplify those voices. And, when we're talking about especially young children who are still finding their voice, they really need us adults to be that voice for them. And also model for them how they can advocate for themselves and how they can find value within themselves. And so this is something that, I have a lot of open conversations with my daughter around how much she should value herself, and affirmations. And every time we do her hair on Sundays, it's like, go check yourself out in the mirror and tell yourself how beautiful you are and how smart you are and all of that. And it just comes with like a lot of repetition, and she's got a lot of confidence. So I'm hoping it sticks.
Thank you
Great.
for that, Amy. And then on Facebook, someone said that collective value means that we're stronger together. So thank you for sharing that.
Sweet. All right. Thank you. Thank you again, Amy. Next question. Why is this an important concept? And I'd love to kick this one over to Abraham. If you're still with us, feel free to answer this question.
Yeah, so when I think about collective value, I think about building community, especially, um, and being able to see other folks how they arrive in that community, and not necessarily how you want them to be. And I think it's important just to think about how I want my young people to see others, right? And to see the value in others and you know, and being inclusive.
100%, Abraham. Thank you for reflecting on that. And we've got one last question in this slide. How would you teach this to a child? I see Hannah is in this, had joined us recently. Possibly, if you're here, you could definitely answer this one. If not, one of our educators, we can kick one to.
Hi. Oh gosh.
Oh, no, you're here. Okay, cool.
I am here. I was just trying to write to Brantons. I'm so sorry that I was tardy, but I'm here.
No problem.
I'm like a student. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, just we're reflecting on the collective value right now. And so how would you teach this collective value to a child?
Gosh, I'm thinking more about how to teach it to an adult. So at least I want to offer that for a second, because I just immediately thought of, sorry, my husband's being loud. I immediately thought of Jason Reynolds, and who's an amazing author, Black author. And one of my favorite like TED Talks is him talking about how we collectively need to care for all children. And when we talk about like Black Lives Mattering, we're talking about all Black Lives Mattering, and that it's not just like, you know, Elijah, you know, playing his violin, right? It's every other Black child, no matter, you know, how they present. And so I really like how you said that, like, however they are presenting, that is the child that you're supporting. And I think it's, you know, quote unquote, easier to say, oh, this poor, like Black child, you know, or like Tyree, like Nichols, like he was this like aspiring photographer, right? So beautiful, right? But that's not the only story that we need to be supporting. So there's an amazing clip where Jason Reynolds just like really talks about it. And he's like, we care for all Black children, doesn't matter what they look like. So at least me as an educator, and I'm a school social worker, you know, that's just like showing, you know, every single like facet of Black history and Black lives mattering for my students, especially like the inclusion of like all bodies, all sizes, all abilities, things we can see or things we may not see. And then I do happen to work in also like a fairly strong Latinx community. So I also talk a lot about like Afro-Latino Black Americans. Hi, thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. And if anybody would like to jump out with any more examples or non-examples, if not, we're going to keep the ball rolling on these. We got quite a few to get through. So we're going to move on to diversity.
And I think I'm Michelle, and I think that's both Hannah and Amy mentioned diversity while they were talking about collective value. So I heard different types of diversity, including people who are differently abled, and I think Amy mentioned special education. So the part of diversity that I want to really discuss is the Blackness. Why are we centering Blackness? Since there is so much diversity, why center Blackness? So I want to throw that out to the group and see if anybody is willing to answer, you know, share their thoughts.
I actually wanted to go back to collective value just really quickly. I wanted to add that teaching this concept as a teacher, teaching this concept to students is not about teaching it as a concept. Oh, now today we're going to study collective value. It's more so about our everyday actions from day one, right? From day one, we are acknowledging the gifts that everybody in the class brings, right? And uplifting them. You know, with Leah, Amy, you know, recognizing her bright spirit and the personality that she brings to the class from day one. Hi, Amy. Hi, Mercy. Just from day one. So just in our actions as teachers, as people, recognizing everybody brings value to the space.
Thank you for sharing that, Mars. That makes me think of that asset-focused lens that we should be looking through as we look at all human beings. So diversity is one of the principles. Why center Blackness?
What do you think, Dr. Michelle? Why do we center Blackness?
I think we center Blackness as a way of uprooting white supremacy. That if we really want to undo the status quo, it has to be intentionally uplifting people who are oppressed and marginalized. And under white supremacy, Black people have been oppressed and marginalized. So I feel like that's why we center Blackness. That's why it has to come right back. Anybody else want to add their thoughts?
When all Black folks are free, everyone will be free. Short and sweet.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. And Mars, I think this is your slide.
Okay, great. Restorative justice. Yes. Hold on, I have to get it on my laptop because I'm on my phone. Okay. So if in our community, if someone causes a problem, they have to take responsibility for it. They can't just say sorry and walk away. We know that when kids make mistakes, they should be allowed to make a better choice another time. And it's grown-ups' jobs to help them make better choices and give them other chances. We also know that when a person is able to fix a problem they've caused, this not only solves the problem, but it also helps the person who caused the problem more than a punishment would. So when we try to heal the hurt on both sides, we practice restorative justice. So just recognizing that every action comes from a place, right? It comes from a feeling, it comes from a thought. So working with children to work through those thoughts and those feelings, acknowledging them, not teaching them that they have to hide their feelings or be ashamed of their feelings, but working through them to understand them, that they come from a place. So some of the bullet points that we added on here were the school to prison pipeline and how the lack of restorative justice in school is causing the school to prison pipeline to continue to flourish. The Black Lives Matter initiative, counselors, not cops, getting cops out of our schools because our children do not need to be policed. They need counseling, they need healing, they need love, they need understanding. And then if any of the educators want to talk about ways to practice restorative justice or conflict resolution, that's what we can discuss next.
I also have a question as a parent, if that's okay that I ask right now about restorative justice.
Absolutely.
So what I'm thinking about is I used to be a dean at a school in Oakland. And in my experience, as a restorative justice practitioner, more teachers and families wanted to see punitive action. And I wouldn't say it's because they want to see students punished, but it's because that's what they're taught through informal curriculum, right? And in informal ways, that is what's supposed to happen when someone does something that they deem is bad or inappropriate. But there has to be like, well, what is their punishment? What's going to happen to them? Are they suspended? Are they expelled or things like that? And so I'm wondering, how do you get not only community members, but teachers as well, especially when, as far as my understanding, a lot of teacher training programs don't include things like restorative justice. How, as a school community, do you get folks to buy into that as opposed to continuing punitive action just because that's what has been historically done? Especially when thinking about how punitive action can be connected to Black students and some of their colloquial behaviors. So, for instance, like if a student uses a colloquialism in language, they can be sent out of class, or if they speak out of turn, right, they can be penalized for it. But how do you get folks to kind of move away from that deficit lens and more into a healing, restorative lens?
Yeah, thanks for that question. That's a really, really good thought and question. Um, I was just thinking about the fact that people learn through narratives a lot of the time. So when we start talking about unlearning the narratives that have framed their current thought process, and so it's not going to be a one conversation thing, right? It might have to be over time, but it's conversations about what narrative are you creating in your head about the student that you want to be punished, instead of what's really going on with, like I was talking about a second ago, with their feelings and their emotions, their thoughts, what they're dealing with, what they come from, what their needs are. A lot of the time that child has a need that's not being fulfilled. So speaking about it in terms of what the children actually need and what would help them, instead of what would, I guess, make the parent feel better, because that's what they're used to. And then there's a lot of other educators in here that could also speak on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. This is something that we're thinking about as we're designing the 5280 Freedom School Charter School, but also our summer camp and other programs. It makes me think about one, like children are children and children make mistakes. And our job as adults is to help children learn from those mistakes, not to punish them for the mistakes, right? So like, it's important for students to be in an environment that lets them take risks, that lets them make mistakes, and also lets them grow from those mistakes, because they are children. They're not, I mean, as adults, we make mistakes too. And so really thinking about, like, kids aren't supposed to be perfect, right? And so how do we give them space to learn from from choices that they make that might not be the best choices? I think something else I'm thinking about too is this idea of that we should be controlling kids, and we shouldn't, right? And so again, like that punishment part comes from, we want to control the kids and we want other kids to see that we have this control and that we are the authority. And it's like, no, that's not what this is, right? And so if we come from it from a different mindset and really just like acknowledge that the child is a child and doing something that a child would do, and then like think about, then what is my job as an adult to help this child make a better decision next time? And then something else I think about too is, like, we know that positive reinforcement is what works, is what actually will stick. And so again, like punishing the child, yeah, maybe in the moment it might cause a feeling for them to be like, oh, maybe I made a mistake, but focusing on positive, what the child is doing right, that's what you want to really be bringing up. And then the final thing with restorative practices is all about addressing the harm and then repairing the relationship. And in order to repair a relationship, you don't necessarily need to, like, you don't need to punish someone to fix the harm in the relationship. And so helping students realize what did they do that caused harm to someone else or to their community, and how can they fix it? That's what we should really be centering. And then with that, for sake of time, we'll go to the next one, which is globalism. And just quick, globalism is just the reminder that Black people exist all over the world. And so when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, we're talking about Black Lives Mattering all over the world, and also thinking about what are ways that we are different, but how are we also connected in this struggle? And we know that in different places, Black people are still treated bad, right? And we just know the impact of white supremacy on Black lives is a global issue and not just an issue in the US.
And quickly on Black villages are simply, you know, our community, our Black community. How are we strengthening that? How are we, what are we consuming from our communities? What is our conscious consumption doing to contribute to bettering our communities and villages? We pulled out 2 examples from some Kwanzaa principles over there to the right, Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility, and Ujama, which is cooperative economics. So where are we spending that dollar? Can we spend it with Black businesses and support those Black businesses, or maybe going out to a Black-owned restaurant maybe once a week, supplementing some of those maybe fast food places, or just showing these different examples of how we can be represented in our communities. Yeah.
Thanks, Xavier. Another one of our principles is Black women. And funny that we're talking about white-centered Black women, some of the bullet points that are there. Patriarchy and sexism is one form of oppression that hits Black women hard. And then white feminism, as we think of the feminist movement, who wasn't allowed in that. And so centering Black women is putting them back, giving them the importance that that they deserve, because they've been dually oppressed by systems and structures. The other thing I note is that when BLM first started, it was created by 3 Black women.
Yes, and then our BLM 5280 chapter was also started by 3 Black women, one of which is on the call right now. Shout out to Amy Brown. And I think something else that I think about with centering Black women is the Combahee River Collective Statement, which they say, like, we can't all be free until Black women are free. And so going back to this point again around, like, the most marginalized has to be the one that's centered so that we can be liberated.
Mars, this is yours.
Okay. I won't read the whole thing this time, but yes, loving engagement. When I was, when we were coming up with the bullet points for this one, we were thinking about what makes people engage with other people lovingly, or lack of those things might make you engage in hostile or aggressive ways, right? And a lot of that comes from within. Self-reflecting, healing as individuals, healing as a collective, affirmations that uplift yourself, uplift your community. So yeah, with as far as children go, teaching self-reflecting and affirmations are definitely the way to go there. Just simple I am statements every day, looking in the mirror.
Thank you
And then
for sharing that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then I'm looking in the chat. Hannah said, at our DPS school, we utilize conscious discipline, which gives both parties a chance to be accountable for each other so that they can do better or differently next time. That is so beautiful, Hannah. I participated in conscious discipline training. I believe her name was Dr. Becky, like we were watching the videos. And I did not get that takeaway. So thank you for putting it in this way. Yeah, and I think that's very accountability. Even we see adults struggle with accountability. So like, let's help our children learn how to be accountable for the things that they say and do.
Well, and I mean, that was like from, the school to prison pipeline slide, but I can definitely tie it in, and I would love to chat with you about conscious discipline at some point, because it's way different than just Dr. Becky. But so much of it is that until you do your own like reflection and self-healing of like who you are and maybe who you were raised and what messages you received, you really can't try to be a mirror for our students. to support them. So if you, so it's like, if like educators, we had to be able to like heal and affirm in order to support our students in healing and affirming, which I think is really strong.
Thank you. Yes, I would love to chat with you some more about that offline. Our next one is empathy. When I think about empathy, I think about, again, I talk about like the ways to get these conversations started, right? Like present this to the teachers around empathy, really having them think about how is your treatment of this Black student? How are they feeling it? Or even like, how is this Black student, when they leave this classroom, what is their life like? What are the images that they're seeing, right? What's going on for them? And then through that lens, right, you'll start to see that like they bring assets to your classroom, and again, that they're humans with feelings. And so I think definitely listening to understand when you are called in or called out about a microaggression or something that may be racist happening, believing your Black students, believing your Black children. And then again, like around these adult mindsets, like check your way of thinking. Is what you're thinking rooted in white supremacy culture? Is what you're thinking showing a student that you, one, let you love them, that you believe in them, but two, like, are you showing that you have this asset-based mindset of them? So again, just like really take some time to put yourself in the shoes of your students, but not like in a weird way, but like just really getting to know your student. And then when you like come from it from that place, I think it'll change the way that you interact with your children, especially children from marginalized backgrounds.
And our next one is queer affirming. Briefly, everybody has the right to listen to their own heart and mind and choose how they describe themselves, who they love, and the kind of family they want. I think this one really hits home for parents and teachers alike, because we want to unlearn harmful gender ideologies that maybe we've grown up with. Definitely binary identification between male and female. And that's changed very quickly and rapidly over the past couple years. So just the aspect of being vulnerable and willing to learn where these students are coming from, where these children are coming from, and make sure you watch your language and what you project onto your kids at the home as well, because they carry that ideology that you have at home into the school environment. So it definitely starts in the home with this one.
Yes, an example I just put in the chat was around using non-gendered language. That's one way that you can show that you are queer affirming.
Correct.
And that goes right into the next principle, which is trans affirming, and really being mindful of language, as Branta said, and really moving away. I feel like a lot of our principles really has to do with unlearning a lot of the status quo that we were raised in. And so really learning to be inclusive. And so some of the inclusive language that we came up with as, for teachers, you can say class, kids, folks, humans, people. And I mean, some of those you can also say as parents too, kids, humans. I think it's really funny when I call my students humans, they think it's funny. They're like, what else are we? I'm like, you're human. Inclusive books. I think that whether you're an educator or a parent, just having some picture books like Julian is a Mermaid is the first one that comes to my mind. But even Morris Smickle and the Tangerine Dress. When my daughter is in second grade, her teacher was very conservative Christian. And so I donated that book to the classroom, Morris Smickle, and then I went and read it. And she couldn't say no because I volunteered my time, and that parents have that power. And so the questions I got from the kids were really great. Like they were like, boys can't wear dresses. I'm like, why not? Girls wear pants. And it really is on learning what we have been taught. Sorry.
Is this me? I can't see the notes.
It is you. I always feel
It's
bad.
me. Okay, all right, no problem. Unapologetically Black. We're gonna be getting into this one at Saturday School this Saturday. I'm very excited. But this is just centering Blackness in a way that children walk around with their head held high, no matter where they are, no matter who's around. And they can say, I'm unapologetically Black. I'm Black and I'm proud. I come from powerful people. We have a strong history, just uplifting them in every single way. And then we also wanted to mention anti-Black racism versus the status quo of white supremacy, because a lot of the times, you might get asked, or educators especially might get asked, well, why do you need to center Black students out of everybody? Why can't you just say, oh, everybody's important? Why do you have to say Black people are important? Well, because when students go out into the world, they're shown that everybody else, or especially white people, are important, just in the propaganda, in the imagery, in the music, in a lot of things. So in TV, which is anti-Black racism a lot of the times. So just standing against white supremacy in every way, by uplifting unapologetic Blackness specifically.
So this is a good one for educators when you're thinking about the different families that you interact with, just making sure that all families feel included in your classroom, that all families feel like they have a voice and a say, and then making sure that when you're talking to students, again, it's like this unlearning, when you're talking to students about families, right, that you're not just saying your parents, you can say your caretakers, you can say your guardians, you don't have to say, moms and dads. Just thinking about like different ways that you can be truly inclusive, because we know that all families are important. And in this particular sense, Black families are important and they look different. And some families have one parent, some families have no parents, and all those families are important and should feel included.
And then our last one is intergenerational. This one really is about just filling in those gaps and making sure that like kids learn from their elders and elders learn from the kids. It helps a lot when people just may have lost ties to their grandparents or don't have older people, is to continue to strengthen these Black villages that we talked about, because a lot of people are raised by the village. And so like the village has elders, the village has kids, and to advance that village in these communities, we're going to need to work together to just guide that evolution of thought. In a nutshell, I think that's what we can do.
So Black Lives Matter at School Week has a student creative challenge. And so this is not just for educators, but for parents if they want their child to participate. So I'm going to put the bit.ly link in the chat so that you see it. And I'll read part of it to you. So we invite you to submit a creative response, including but not limited to drawing, painting, collage, poetry, rap, song, rap, or any other type of expression. It is due Sunday the 12th, and that's why we're putting it out now to the families that we have here and on Facebook Live. But the question is, how can a school community support you in being unapologetically Black? And so feel free to participate in this, and it will be shared publicly.
So teachers, if you're thinking about an activity that you can do, make some time for your students to be able to complete this project in your class this week. And then you can even help them with submitting it, so you make sure that it gets in. And another plug for Freedom School, will also be offering time and resources on Saturday, February 11th from 10 a.m. to noon to participate in this challenge as well. Okay, so we are at the end of our time. And I know we're past time, so if you need to go, feel free to hop off, but we wanted to open the floor for additional questions or comments that we may have from participants on the call or on Facebook.
I just want to say thank you for holding space to have this conversation. And it's amazing to know that there are folks thinking about the next generation. They experience school, especially including an Afrocentric lens, things like restorative justice, healing, and just like rehumanizing the educational experience. I know those young folks will grow to appreciate it, and I know they do already, but I know that as they reflect back on their educational experience, they definitely will see a lot of value in that. And so I just want to say thanks for holding space for that.
And thank you so much for joining and sharing your story. And we are with you in heart and mind as you raise your 2 children and stand with Black lives. So thank you so much.
Yes, and please feel free to reach out to us if you encounter any issues that you may need like thought partnership with, or like people to advocate alongside you. Our Ed Squad, we don't shy away from things like that. So definitely use us as your resource. You can email us at info@5280freedomschool.com. We've had experience advocating for students in the Boulder Valley School District. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to us in whatever districts that you might be in. And I see, Amy, you have a hand up.
I think she was just saying that she was leaving. She said in the chat.
No, Mercy want to say hi to all her aunties.
Oh, Amy Brown.
But I also did want to look up just one thing that I have picked up, like in my own personal studies. I'm not an educator, but I've had to do a lot of my own unlearning. And I know we talk a lot about centering those who are furthest off because of the dangers of white supremacy. I'm trying to talk, so just go, Mama, please, because of the harm white supremacy causes all people, including white people. But I think a message that I don't hear get lifted up as often, but is as important, is that there are really important learnings in other ways of being. There are really important traditions to be brought to the spotlight in Indigenous ways that honor two-spirit identities, gender nonconforming persons, cultivating the earth, being, living in harmony with your surroundings. Like, there are really important ways that have been shut out that are actually to everyone's benefit. So it's not just, yes, white supremacy is evil and problematic. Also, there are some very beautiful and important learnings that we risk losing when we keep those in the margins pushed out and unamplified. So I just wanted to lift that up. And do you want to say good night? No, but she is Grant's favorite yogurt for dinner. She wanted to let you know that.
Lucky you, Mercy. Lucky you.
Thank you so much for that, Amy. That's such an important thought that you shared with us. And Abraham, thank you so much for being here. And it's so nice to meet you. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with 5280 Freedom School, but we are opening a school in the fall in the 5 Points area. And we also do monthly Saturday program at the school in 5 Points. If you follow our social media on Facebook or Instagram, or now that we have your email address, we can also add you to our list there. And we're going to be recruiting for the summer program really soon too. If you'd like to come out and even talk to the kids, teach something, that would be awesome. So nice to meet you.
Yes, and we also have transportation options. I know you have one student in 5th grade and one student in kindergarten. So we don't have space for middle schoolers, but if you're interested in sending your kindergartner, we are organizing transportation options, including from Boulder. Yes, and then Hannah, thank you so much for showing up as an educator tonight and a parent. Thank you for your support. And again, for anyone, if you all have additional comments or questions, reach out to us because we are here. We're here for you all, and we're here for our babies. And so with that, we will close with Asada's chant. Does anyone want to lead it?
I can lead it. It's been a while.
Yeah, and feel free to unmute. All the participants, feel free to unmute to participate in this part.
All right, so I'll just read it sentence by sentence, and you all can just repeat after. It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is
It
our
is our
duty.
duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It
It
is
is
our
our
duty.
duty to win.
We must love and protect one another.
We must
We must
love.
love and protect one another.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank y'all.
All right.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Peace.